Hello and welcome to This Really Happened, a place where unbelievable, heart-touching true stories come to life. Sometimes surprising, sometimes bittersweet, always real. Grab a drink and settle in. We're about to begin. Sarah rushed through the rooms, hastily gathering the first things that came to hand. Her breath hitched, her nerves were frayed. The chief physician had just called, puzzled by her sudden departure. Of course they let her go immediately, but questions poured in from all sides. Right now, she couldn't give any explanations, and she didn't want to talk to anyone. She had met her future husband during her internship at one of the city hospitals. Feelings flared unexpectedly, and they decided not to resist them, marrying soon after. After she started working at the clinic, they decided to wait on having children. She had just started her career, and then it simply wasn't the right time, although she had hinted to her husband about her desire. Her thoughts carried her back to the past, and her eyes immediately filled with tears of hurt and anger. It was all her friend's fault. The day before, she had learned that her friend had never been a true friend to her. She supplemented her income by staying for night shifts at the hospital. Just yesterday, she was supposed to have a 24-hour shift, but the duty was cancelled. Joyfully, she hurried home to surprise her husband. But when she quietly entered the apartment, she heard female laughter. "You surprise me every time. I really don't know what you'll come up with next." It was her friend's voice, and her husband replied, "You know, you always motivate me. I think about you every minute. I want you to be happy. I'm ready to do anything so you won't be disappointed in me, my dear. You are my universe. I'm ready to do anything for your smile and a kiss." She slowly backed away towards the front door. What she had heard was enough to understand what was happening. Sounds of kissing came from the room, and she didn't want to see what was going on in there. She quietly left the apartment, not locking the door behind her. She spent the night at the hospital, not closing her eyes, and now she had returned to pack her things. She wanted to disappear, and during the night she figured out where. She had inherited a small house in the village from her grandmother. No one knew about it because many years ago she had left to live with her father in another city after her mother passed away. Only after her grandmother's death did she go for the funeral and learn that she had left the house to her. It was a decent little house that had been empty all this time since its owner passed. She decided to go there. All that remained was to pack the essentials and documents. No one would find her there. She didn't want her husband or her so-called best friend to know where she was. Let them think she had disappeared or something had happened to her. "My soul is no longer here," the young woman whispered softly. An hour later, everything necessary was packed. She stopped in the middle of the room, surveying the familiar surroundings. She felt she would never return here again. Here she had been happy, and here she had also learned of the betrayal by the two people closest to her. This place had ceased to be her safe haven. Now it was a foul swamp where disgusting deeds had been committed. She felt nauseous and hurried to leave the apartment, to go nowhere. 2 days later, she was already in the village. Before boarding the plane, she threw away her old SIM card and bought a new one. She didn't want to be bothered by calls from her husband, friend, or anyone else. If necessary, she would contact the hospital herself to inform them of her decision regarding her job. But while she was flying, the thought of giving up her medical career entirely grew stronger. The actions of the people close to her had knocked the ground out from under her, and she didn't know how to live on. She only understood that she wanted to radically change her life to recover. Now she was walking along the side of the road with a suitcase. She had arrived in the village by bus, but still had to walk to her grandmother's house. A local resident gave her a ride, but only to the right lane. Now she was making her own way home. When she finally arrived, her heart immediately felt lighter. Before her stood her grandmother's house, which now belonged to her. Here she could hide, and no one would hurt her any more. She opened the creaky gate and entered the yard. She stood for a minute, then slowly closed the gate behind her, leaving all her sorrows and worries behind, and stepped forward towards a new, as yet unknown life. 2 weeks later, she slowly began to recover. During this time, she managed to get acquainted with the neighbours. They all turned out to be remarkably kind people. They helped her with the house, found workers who quickly put everything in order. The furniture in the house turned out to be quite decent, and the yard was quickly tidied up as well. She even started smiling because she couldn't react any other way to the kindness of strangers. They didn't know her at all. To them she was a stranger, but in 2 weeks they had done more for her than she could have expected. Her wounded heart was weeping tears, but the wounds quickly healed from such tender treatment. And then something happened that made her realize she wouldn't be able to hide her profession. She wanted to give it up, to become a simple milkmaid or a collective farmer. What else one could do in the village she didn't know yet, but she intended to find out. But she didn't get such an opportunity. In the morning, her neighbour, Mary, the one who had helped the most with the house, rushed over. She was agitated and spoke quickly. "Good morning. Please forgive me, dear, but I won't be able to help you today. I urgently need to go to the city. My daughter is quite sick. Her stomach has been hurting for several days, and she got really bad during the night. She's constantly throwing up, can't even drink. I'm a bit worried, and we don't have a doctor here. Since the last one left, they haven't sent anyone else. I don't even know who to turn to. I'm terribly worried about her. She's lying there pale, breathing somehow heavily. Her eyes look wild." Sarah said anxiously, "She's dehydrated. We need to start an IV drip immediately. She probably ate something bad, but we need to clear the toxins urgently." Mary threw up her hands. "My dear, what words you're saying? Where would we get an IV drip here in the village? And even if we had one, no one knows how to use it. Our village people can't even give a simple injection. And you're talking about an IV drip. We'll take her to the city. That's where they'll treat her, my precious child." Sarah immediately ran into the house for her medical bag. She had everything necessary. She had brought it just in case, although she hadn't intended to stand out here in any way. She started the IV drip for Lily, and she immediately felt better. She was able to drink water. By evening, the child looked quite decent. There was no need to go to the city. Mary was ready to kiss her hands. The next day, the whole village already knew that she was a doctor. She couldn't hide her profession. She realized that when Lily got better, she felt such joy. And she felt that only medical practice brought her such pleasure, which nothing else could bring. And a month later, she was already working at the local medical centre, which had been empty for a long time. None of the doctors wanted to waste their lives away, sitting in a village. But this was exactly what she needed, to hide from her past life and be useful to kind and responsive people. Several months passed, and she came on a house call to a girl who had had a fever for a long time. She was met by a pleasant-looking man. "Hello, doctor. You don't know me yet, but I've heard quite a bit about you. My name is David. Please help my daughter." Sarah only glanced at the man, noting his beautiful eyes, but immediately pushed away extraneous thoughts. That's all she needed. Of course, she had been without a man for too long, but not to the extent that just a glance at beautiful eyes would drive her crazy. "Take me to her. I'll examine the girl. I'll examine." 10 minutes later, she was already writing out prescriptions on a sheet of paper. She has bad wheezing. I'll write down the name of the medicine for you now. You'll need to go to the city to buy it, and a couple of other medications. And perhaps you could call your wife. I'll tell her how to treat the little one. I have a couple of secrets I can share. The girl will get better quickly. Silence hung in the air, and she looked at the man with confusion. He was looking at her, his brows furrowed. A minute later he said, "I don't have a wife. I'm raising Lily myself." My wife. During childbirth. He fell silent, swallowing a lump in his throat. Sarah immediately looked at the fair-haired little angel lying in bed. Her blue eyes looked at her so trustingly. She felt her heart clench in her chest. How unfair life was. She had asked her husband for a child, but he didn't want one. Probably because he was having an affair with her friend. And she had dreamed of a child so much. And here before her lay a girl who had never known a mother's affection. And it was so painful to encounter such injustice in life. She looked at the man again and felt an unfamiliar feeling emerging in her heart. Perhaps sympathy, perhaps anxiety, perhaps understanding of his pain. And she almost drowned in his eyes, which were looking at her so intently. "You know, I'll come every day then. I'll do everything necessary myself. You just buy the medicine, and I'll make sure Lily gets back on her feet quickly. Yes, Princess?" She stroked the girl's head, and she smiled at her tenderly. The man also smiled, and she noticed how much the father and daughter resembled each other. "I don't know how to thank you. How about I come pick you up every evening so you don't have to walk here yourself?" he suggested. She wanted to refuse such kindness, but immediately changed her mind. She hadn't interacted with men for so long, and this one was so pleasant, polite, and his daughter was such a sweetheart. What bad could happen if he came to pick her up? She would ask him about the girl. She just wanted to talk to someone other than patients and neighbours. "All right, I'll give you the address then, where I know where you live," the man interrupted her and immediately fell silent. Sarah looked at him and saw something in his eyes that unsettled her. A handsome man. But she had already had one such man in her life who had trampled her heart. She already regretted agreeing to his visits, but there was no turning back. She had suggested it herself. Time passed. She was sitting on a bench in front of the house, drinking fragrant tea. Strong male arms embraced her from behind, followed by a tender kiss on the cheek. She closed her eyes and smiled. "My love, do you really have the day off today? You are mine and only mine," the man whispered in her ear. Sarah didn't have time to answer before Lily jumped off the steps with a squeal. The man sighed, or rather, not mine, but ours. She smiled, remembering the events of the past year. It had been the most wonderful time because she had found true love. He had melted her heart, and it turned out he had seen her long before she saw him and had fallen in love at first sight. His daughter's illness had brought them together. And it had also been a difficult time because she had to confront her past. For his sake and his daughter's, she wanted to put a definitive end to her past relationships and went back to where she had left her husband and former friend. It turned out they hadn't really looked for her. They were already living together, and signing all the documents was just a formality that needed to be completed. They did everything quickly. While she was sorting out her affairs, her friend wanted to talk to her, but she didn't say a word to her. And her ex-husband didn't even try to justify himself, only saying that life is an unpredictable thing. That was the last time she saw them. Now, nothing connected her to her past life anymore. She could dedicate herself to the man she loved, whom she had met thanks to her grandmother's house. Sarah sighed, freeing herself from the remnants of unpleasant memories. She stroked the man's hand. "We have so much time that I'll still have time to bore you." "You are my life. I love you, and you will never bore me," the man said, holding her tightly in his arms.